Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. I am your host, Tyler Jorgenson, and today you get to hear me share a little bit of what I love about e-commerce. Joshua Koerpel is a good friend of mine who I met 2 years ago in Barcelona, Spain. We met through a friend on one of my 48-hour power jaunts, a journey that I do as frequently as I can, where I go and experience and explore a new city anywhere in the world for 2 days. It is an amazing thing, and I absolutely love doing it. If you want to see more info on that, go to bizninja.com/48. But Josh interviewed me for his Firebuilders Live, and it's a really cool live show that he does where he talks about just building momentum in your business and what's working and what's going on. So without further ado, I'm going to share my interview on his show with you, because I think that it will be a good show here for BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. It's your turn to go out and do something.
From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California, this is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgenson.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Firebuilders Live. My name is Josh Koerpel. Like always, I'm streaming live from Key West, Florida, a cold Key West, Florida. Normally, I don't have the jacket on. Jesus, what is happening here in the world? I have very special guest, Tyler Jorgenson, on the line. Tyler, welcome to the show, my man.
I'm super excited to be here, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time, dude. He and I have been friends now for a while. We first met in Barcelona on a 48-hour power jaunt, which we'll get into in a second. But let me tell you a little bit about what Tyler has done. CEO, professional speaker. He's the host of the radio talk show BizNinja, right? He is a contributor to places like Entrepreneur and MSN and ABC News. The guy knows just about everything there is to know about e-commerce. Through sweat, through tears, through persistence. I think honestly, Tyler, I think that they're running out of awards to give you, man. You are pulling off superhuman feats like building and launching 176 Shopify stores and brands, not just the tech part, but the actual brand in 9 months. Guys, if you do the math, that is one new store every 1.5 days for 9 months. And if the work teaches you the work, I tell you, Tyler is becoming truly a master at this craft. But what we're also going to be talking about, it's not always just about the money. It's about consciously creating a life that you love. For Tyler, spending time with his family, right? It hasn't always been easy. The man has been, at the foot of despair with negative $17,000 in his bank account, fourth child on the way. He had to pull it all together and make things happen. E-commerce was the way that he was able to do it. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Tyler, dude, it's so awesome to have you. Once again, thank you and welcome to Firebuilders Live.
Yeah, man, that is a ridiculously awesome intro, but I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you. I'm excited too. We tried to make this happen. Well, dude, I think ever since Barcelona, we've been trying to make something like this happen. I was on my way to California to see you when lockdown happened, and now we'll just have to do it virtually.
Yeah, you and the Roosters are just stuck in cold and boring Key West.
Cold and boring Key West. Yeah, exactly. It's it's interesting here. I love it. I love it down here, but there's not too much of an entrepreneurial online entrepreneurial community the way that there is in LA, and that's the one thing that I kind of miss.
Yeah, that makes sense, big time.
Yeah. So, with the way that I like to start the show off, man, tell everybody a little bit. Where are you in the world? I kind of just gave it away, but who cares, right? Where are you in the world? And what's a typical day life in Tyler Jorgenson's life these days, man?
Yeah, so I'm in Southern California, in the suburbs of the suburbs, in a little city called Eastvale that people even nearby me have never heard of, even though it's 70,000 people. It's just a newer city. And I grew up in San Diego, and so that still feels kind of like home. But then I went to USC, so then I have this ties to Los Angeles. But so I just say Southern California.
Yeah.
And a day in the life, man, probably 75% of my day right now is spent running my agency, where we help e-commerce brands market and grow. So we just help physical product sellers sell more and grow their business. And so growing that team and working with that team as we help those our clients, that's probably the majority of the day. And then there's a good chunk of the time is spent in stuff like this, connecting with amazing people like Josh and sharing the message of marketing and entrepreneurship, and obviously interviewing for my show, BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio, which I've been doing since 2011 with guests like Tim Ferriss and people like that have been on the show.
Which is insane, by the way, the fact that you've kept it up this long. Like seriously, man, I've listened to a bunch of episodes, and I strive to do the same things that you're doing with BizNinja.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Consistency is a challenge. We were talking just a minute before the show that like sometimes there'll be a lull where I'm like, I just don't have guests for this week. Just play an old show. But I give myself that grace after doing it for so long, and I just don't let it stress me out. But what's been really cool about it is just the number of people I've been able to connect with from like every angle of the internet and the marketing world and the entrepreneurial world, because really we just tell the entrepreneurial journey and share the process of like, how are you overcoming challenges and how did you learn to do that? And really I started the show because there was things I wanted to learn and I couldn't get people on the phone that were like experts. So I started a show, and then they would call me and want to come on the show. And so I was like, oh, well, this is a really great way to like talk with top level CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs, and they're requesting contact with me. And so it just changed the game.
Flips the power balance a little bit, right?
For sure. Yeah. So totally. So I started that show on NBC, and now it's an ABC News radio show. And it's awesome. It's a lot of fun just connecting with people, but it's a lot, as you know, it's a lot to produce. Make sure that everyone's shows up, that you always have guests lined up. This is you're in your over 100 episodes now, I believe, right?
This is 118, man. You're number 118.
That's a lot. And people don't realize how much energy goes into before we get here. Right. Yeah. And so, and then
that's what I tell people all the time. It's like the bulk of the work, the conversation. If I just had to show up and have a great conversation with people like you every day, it'd be a cinch, Right. But the actual work is like the ends of the bell curve. It's like the before the show and all the different scheduling conflicts that happen. And I'm sure that you've had like some crazy stories where people just call at the last minute and they're like, hey man, sorry, we were going to do it live, but can't do it. Had something come up, cancel you on you and stuff. And you just have to deal with that, all the automations and stuff. And then the follow-up afterwards. It's just a huge part of it, bulk of it.
Yeah. The first, how long was it? Probably a year of the show, maybe 2 years, was actually live radio. It was an hour-long live radio show. And if someone didn't call, like, you got to fill the air, right? Like, if they didn't call in. And then we also would have issues where, people started swearing, the guys, in the sound booth, the producers trying to mute them and not get fined by, it was just, it added a whole new complexity.
Was there a delay?
It's like 3 seconds. It's not a lot. So they have to hear it and then hit like a skip button or something. I don't know. I didn't deal with that side of it, but
I think I would, if I had to do that, I would use the rooster like every
exactly.
Like
that'd be
that.
awesome.
Like, I don't know if you just heard that. That was Elvis.
Yeah, I think, you do the show live, and I think what's cool about live is it adds something that's just you can't do when you're recording. If everyone knows it's being recorded and they can mess up, it takes the edge off a little bit. And there's Elvis again, but and so the energy of it being live is just different and neat and really cool. So I love that.
I totally agree. And I think people actually tune in to the live shows the same reason that they tune into like NASCAR, because they're, in the backs of their minds, they're just waiting for something to blow up or somebody to have like a conniption or a meltdown on live television.
That's funny. Totally doable. Yeah, I could see that. And yeah, people, it's the reality show style of it, right? Where they're just looking for the mistake, the things to explode.
Yeah. But yeah. So, I totally agree. And I am now anyway, seeing the power of the show and having it open doors to learn a skill, right? Particularly, is that how you built a lot of your repertoire when it comes to e-commerce, aside from just doing it, and learning as you went, and learning those lessons the hard way? It does help to talk to some people that know what they're talking about. Is that the vehicle that you use to do it?
So for me, what it's helped is the like on the higher end or the things I didn't know. So early on, I figured out e-commerce pretty quickly, at least for my first business. Not like amazing, but I at least it was working. And so I started looking outside of that. So I was like, man, I want to get into retail. So I would get people, I would put out a thing saying, hey, I want to talk to people that have successfully gotten their products in retail. And then all the questions I was asking them on the show were about like the things I actually had questions for my business. Hey, so how'd you do this? And how'd you get a contact? And what'd you do next? And what supply chain issues did you have? And I just like went through my FAQs with all these people that had just done it successfully. And so it was really, and then so that was for retail, and I'd have manufacturing experts come on. And so really I was like learning ahead of what I was trying to do in the business. So not just because in e-commerce, it can be really simplified. I mean, you can do e-commerce just by drop shipping and you're not touching any products and things like that. But if you're actually going to own the brand and you're going to own the product, then there's a lot to manage in the business. You have your whole supply chain, your whole manufacturing, you've got insurance issues and all kinds of things. And so I would just have experts on every single thing I was trying to learn come on and share with me their experience. And sometimes you realize, hey, these guys are really smart and they figured it out. And other times you're like, oh, they just got lucky. And
it's a miracle. Yeah. It is a miracle that they.
Oh, their uncle works for Walmart. That's what happened, But it's you don't know that until you talk to them.
I'll tell you, is it a situation? So I'm glad that you mentioned the drop shipping, because a lot of people, when they think of e-commerce, that's immediately what they go to is drop shipping. If you were to compare drop shipping to owning your own brand, dealing with the supply chain issues and stuff, is it merely personal preference? Like, is it a situation where you want to go your own brand route simply because you want to have your own control over everything, right? Or is there like a huge financial benefit to it as well?
So both of those things, but both of those things come back to, yes, it's personal. Meaning, one of the first things I do when we teach e-commerce is start by setting out like your dream line. Like, what do you need to make to achieve your goals? Right. So if you, and it's based out of the 4-Hour Work Week, where he talks about dreamlining, which is taking all your goals, all the things you want to do, all the things you want to be, all the things you want to have, and putting them on a timeline, and then working that timeline backwards to say, what's my target daily income to reach and achieve all of my goals, right? And so by using that calculator, and you can say, okay, this is what I need to achieve. So if your goal in launching an e-commerce brand is simply to like reach those goals, then you want to do that with the least amount of risk. And so I love drop shipping for that reason. It minimizes your risk. It makes it, you're able to focus, especially if you're new to the industry, you're able to focus on learning 1 or 2 things of a learning curve instead of 12. And so, but if your goals are like, no, I want to build a brand that has maximum exit potential, I want to sell it, I want to do something like that, well, then the higher up you move in terms of like manufacturing and owning the supply chain, the more pieces of it you can control, the more margin you can potentially create, and the higher exit multiple you can probably command. Mm-hmm. So it is personal preference, but I don't think it's like, well, I don't think it should be just, well, I don't want to deal with that. I think it should be, what is my objective? What's my big goal? And which path is going to get me to that goal the fastest?
Was it when you were first starting? Which one of those was it for you?
When I started, it was 100% income replacement, right? Like, as you mentioned, we were, as I found, like, we were going to find out the gender of our 4th child. And that morning I checked my bank account. It was negative $17,000. I needed to, step 1, just get money coming back in. And then step 2, I needed to make enough money to get out of the hole, close some bank accounts, make some major changes, and then and get things going. Once things stabilized, then the goal shifted. And so then it went from like, okay, can I just replace my income to like, can I turn this into a larger business? So for me, we started with drop shipping. We moved to then private label drop shipping. Then we moved to small batch, like contract manufacturing. And then we went to full formulation, like our own ingredients, our own, everything. It was a supplement company. So at that point, we owned government licenses and we had all kinds of things. So I moved up as my goals changed.
How long did it take? Was it relatively fast the ascension between like just straight up drop shipping to then finally like, controlling the majority of it?
Yeah, I think in the moment things feel slow, and in hindsight you realize how fast it went.
Yeah.
And so it was probably 24 months where that whole thing happened. And by the end of it, we were not only owning our supply chain, but we were also manufacturing for retailers and doing other stuff. And so, I never got to where I actually owned the equipment, but I had like partners that were they owned the equipment. We did all the manufacturing. We had priority on their manufacturing lines and stuff like that. So
Yep.
In hindsight, it was really fast, but in the moment, everything just seems like it takes forever.
It does. Like, it's just, especially if you don't have that dream line too, that like forward progress that that you're working towards something that pulls you out of your day, right? If it's just day in and day out, like the same thing, it can seem so slow for people.
Yeah, big time.
So yeah, so that's how you started, right? Started with drop shipping, and then you kind of move up in the world. And now essentially, right? Well, there's a lot of things that you can learn about e-commerce. You can learn the hard way. And what were some of the biggest lessons that you sort of went through? I mean, did it kick you in the teeth a couple of times?
Yeah. So one of the big challenges is when you pick your niche, right? Like what you decide what you're going to do. It's funny, like, so in the 4-hour work week, like Tim Ferriss actually says, hey, I did a supplement company. I don't advise that you do a supplement company. Like there's a lot of extra challenges there that you could not have to deal with somewhere else. Of course, I did a supplement company. Right. And I say the same thing to everyone else. So like in supplements, I mean, when anything that is ingestible, someone's consuming, you're dealing with like, how does it affect my poop? And like, what does it do? Like, you just have this whole new level of things to deal with. But the thing I didn't realize at the time was the complexities of advertising and of merchant processing. So like just the ability to take credit cards. So in a lot of supplements, they can go from being totally okay to being black market or blacklisted by both Google, Facebook, and your merchant account really quickly. So more than one time, I would go from like, things are going really well to PayPal's holding all of my money. Okay, right. I need to diversify off PayPal. Okay, now I have an underwritten merchant account. Things are going really well. Oh, they just closed my account. I can't collect credit cards. Now I got to go stop Google. Then, Google won't allow us to advertise anymore. So like I went through every potential like business shutdown like multiple times, where you're not going to have that if you're doing a product that isn't as
volatile, almost.
Yeah, volatile and regulated as like dietary supplements, right? Where you're making claims. Like by the end of it, we held, like I said, government licenses where we could make claims, we could say certain things, and it was still a challenge because like the merchant processors, what people don't realize is like when you buy something with a credit card and then, that Visa, whoever, right, make sure that merchant gets that money, there's a period of time where there's a large amount of risk and for the merchant account, because if you do a chargeback, they take that money back from the vendor, but if that person has gone out of business, they can't get that money back. And so there's a lot of risk that people don't really understand when they're just shopping online. Yep. That as when you switch to business owner side, you have to really think about. And so you want to think about what type of, is the product I'm selling high risk? Is it have a high chance of chargebacks? Is it, are people going to be frustrated with the claims or with what I'm offering? And so, just looking at customer service side of it, when you pick your niche is super important.
I think just saying that, the customer service side of things, and sort of deciding which niche you want to go in, not simply because it has the potential to make the most amount of money, but how much time and effort is going to be spent on customer service. How big of a chunk is customer service in your mind? How important is it for a solid foundation for e-com?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do to minimize the need, like having really good frequently asked questions, having good automations in place for communicating when products ship and communicating when there's issue, for giving people a channel to have to address things before they go to their credit card company. It's amazing. It's really frustrating, actually, as a business owner, how our culture has kind of trained people to call their credit card company before calling the company that they actually were doing business with. And it's honestly fraud, right? Like in credit card companies should not allow it to happen, but the customer service rep at Visa or at your American Express, they don't know, and they don't want to deal with that. They're just doing their job and processing it. But it impacts small business owners to a massive degree.
Do you feel like that's systemic from just this overarching thought that customer service for companies, they're going to ignore you? Like you're going to call somebody up and you're not going to get a human. You're going to get some crazy like automated system, and then they'll tell you to send in an email, and then you'll never hear from them. It's just like a frustrating experience.
I see that as a real issue. I don't know if that is the core cause. I'm sure it's a factor, right? I believe in, like, there's always more than one factor. I'm sure it's a factor. I think it comes down to credit card companies fighting for their clients, and so making promises to their clients that they really shouldn't, right? Like, and so if Visa card and all these people are trying to battle for business and want you using their cards, then they want to serve their clients at a high level. And it almost then backfires because it sends this ripple down line where, like I said, I mean, people haven't even sent an email, but then they're making a claim to the credit card company. I spoke to them and they wouldn't do this. And it's like
just outright like lie.
So it's fraud at that point, and people feel okay about it. Oh, just call the credit card company. It's like, no, like reach out to the business. Like you wouldn't do that if you're walking down the street at a farmer's market, right? You buy something and you don't like it, and so you just go push over their table. It's like, go talk to the person.
Well,
right?
I don't know about you. So that's how I handle all my farmers market disputes.
Yeah, but my thing is, like, I think sometimes the internet creates anonymity. And that anonymity, it's kind of like, it's the same thing of how people will treat each other when they're in their car, with road rage versus if they're like out of their car walking through the supermarket. There's always going to be the people that are going to be pricks and they're going to be douches. But for the most part, we get a lot more humanized when we get closer, when we take the screens off, right? And so I don't know. I don't know the answer to it, but I know it's frustrating for business owners.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just one of the What do you think? Because you mentioned the experience, right? The closeness. I would imagine that as an e-commerce company, especially one that wants to create a really solid foundation, and if you're just starting, maybe you don't really know how to do this, but how do you approach replicating such a fantastic experience for people, but do it in almost like an automated way?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in humanizing the experience. So putting a face to a company is a big deal. And I mean, you can look at like Flo from Progressive Insurance, right? Like using an attractive character in business allows people to connect to a human. And so in customer service, you just signing the things from a person, hey, this is Josh, right? And not just, thanks, Team Firebuilders, right? Like, let them connect to somebody, and the more you can throughout that entire like process, get to know, even just about us pages, make sure you have pictures of real people, right? And I was talking with a pretty good sized company yesterday, and I read their about page and it talked about all these people on their team, but it didn't talk about any of them specifically. It's like, we have these types of people on our team. I'm like, but you don't have a single picture of a human there. Like, you're not allowing people to connect to the brand. You're making it harder. People connect faster with people than they do with just stuff and brands.
Yeah.
And the brand will remind them of those connections. So what we did a lot of is, and what was not necessarily what I would recommend, but at the time I was not wanting to be the face of this diet company. And so I was also like, I was emotionally fragile, and I didn't want to do customer service as me because I wouldn't do a good job. I would just give everyone their money back every time and just whatever. I'm a pushover. So I created a fake name, and Tony, and it was seriously Tony Tigre, Tony the Tiger. And Tony did customer service for that company for 11 years. Like, he ran customer service, and it ended up being like 5 or 6 different people over time. But Tony would answer, and everyone got to know Tony, and people would like reach out, hey Tony, can you check and see? And whoever was Tony at the time would just be like, yeah, let me see. And then eventually, Tony got promoted, and then there was an April, But the point is that people connected because it was a name and in person. And if again, that's another early question in the business, right? If you're getting started in e-com or in any business, am I going to be the face of it? And if not, who is going to be? And I think I'm not a huge proponent of picking a fake person. I'd prefer to be a real person. But I've known people that they ran their business even just as their middle name, because they're like, I need it to be me, but I need it to separate from like my digital footprint, right?
Yeah.
And be different and still allow it to be human. So that's my like long-winded answer, is just saying find ways to make it human, find ways to connect.
I know firsthand, actually. I have a friend, we were just talking about this. She did the same thing where she, when it came to negotiations and the really hard communications with customers and clients, the things that you as the face of the brand didn't want to bring up because you were afraid of people, what they would say. And it just made it a little bit more friction. She had an alter ego, essentially. Like, it was still her that was answering all of these, but doing it from the premise under the pretenses of someone else. And that dissociation really helped her have conversations that you would normally have.
Yeah, it was huge. I'm just very empathetic, and sometimes to a fault. And so it allowed me to be practical and still be kind, but follow the rules, right? We had a 180-day money back guarantee, but the one rule was you actually had to try the product. Like, you couldn't just change your mind, right? It's like, hey, did you try it? And if you tried it and it didn't work, then absolutely we'll give you your money back. And it's like, well, no, I didn't try it. It's like, well, then try it.
One job.
Yeah. And that was it. I'm like, that's the only bar you have to clear, is if it doesn't work for you, no problem, but you do actually have to make an effort.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, Tyler, like, he's soft. He would have done it. But Tony, he had a boss. He has to report to the boss and check in. And so he has to, he's got to follow the rules. There's a Seinfeld episode where like they're trying to get the the clerk of this convenience store to like make an exception. He's the owner of the store. And he goes, hey, even I am not above the rules, right? Like, you gotta have policies. And but again, it was hard for me, but Tony was good at following rules.
Yeah, hell yeah. And I think for anybody listening, that is an amazing tip, is to just try it, especially if you're just starting out. And I'll tell you, like, speaking of starting out, right? One of the things that we talked about was, as things shift, I mean, especially in Key West, damn, like I would be surprised if in a year or two you don't have a much more thriving online e-commerce community down here. It doesn't seem to exist yet, but it will, because things are shifting. The service industry, it's tough down here, especially with all these closures and stuff. So as people begin these journeys, right, the one thing I like to ask guests as they come on, right, as they begin to build a foundation, what have you learned, Tyler? Like if you could suggest that they do one thing just as they're starting out to start off on the right foot, what would that thing be?
All right. So I thought about that in advance and I sent it in. And it's interesting. I think some businesses you can do something that's like, oh, I want you to read this book, or I want you to do this particular exercise, I want you to do this. And with e-commerce or any business, to me, the thing that someone really needs to do is become a student of the marketing. There's this old saying, and it's sometimes sad, because like I'll go and I'll speak on ideation or on business, and I'll hear like other people speaking at the same, like they'll speak before me sometimes, and they'll say this adage: if you build a better mousetrap, the whole world will beat down a path to your door to buy it. And then I get up and I say, that's absolute garbage. They won't even know your mousetrap exists.
At these conferences.
Yeah, and it's tough, because I'm usually speaking at like UCLA, and it's like, and here we have the professor of business from Pepperdine, and then now we have some radio schmuck, Tyler, and I'm just like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And like I try to do it diplomatically, but a lot of times I'm just like, no, he's reading from a textbook. He's not doing this, and I absolutely throw stones at the the old school education side of it. I think some schools are adapting, but you can't teach marketing from 1950 anymore. Even then, it really didn't work that way. Like, you're talking like that level of ideation. Nobody knows you exist. No one knows that your business is there, right? So the biggest thing, I don't care if you're, If you're drop shipping or you invented the world's next best mousetrap, you have to learn how to market and get that product in front of people. The single biggest leverage piece that you can do is to become a student of marketing, because then you can go and apply that into any business you're doing, whether it's e-commerce or whether it's a brick and mortar or whether it's a service-based business. And so one of the things I put in the chat, I don't know if I think you can flag it or do something fancy on your side, but is the Facebook ads library is one of my favorite places to research. So you literally just go into this library that Facebook makes public, type in your competitors and look at what kind of ads they're running. And then you can look at how long they've been running. And if they're a well-run company, if an ad has been running for a long time, you know that it's working, right?
Like that's your metric for success at that point.
Yeah, but you also just see what they're testing. And then beyond just the ad, which is super important. Okay, what kind of images were they running? What kind of headlines were they doing? Were they running videos? All beyond that, but what is the offer? Like, are they sending straight to a first purchase? Are they doing a free trial? Are they doing a free plus shipping? Are they doing right? What are they selling, and how are they getting people to buy it for the first time?
Yep.
So I think sometimes we skip that step, and what I've seen a lot of people do. So people, in my observation, when they want to get into e-commerce, they get stuck on one of two places. Number one is they can't pick a niche. They just can't figure it out. They just can't get started. And to that, I'm like, dude, just pick and go, because you can change. Like, this isn't like picking a career.
It's not like a tattoo.
Well, it's not a tattoo and it's not a career, right? Like, you're not stuck with this, right? Like, it's not the same as a job that you've connected to, that you have, 401ks and all these things. Like, if you run it for 60 days and you're like, I hate it. I no longer love fishing, right? I don't want to sell fishing stuff. Cool. Either sell it, close it, or move on and try another one. But the biggest thing is just to really get more, in wrestling, we'd say get more mat time, right? Just get more experience under your belt.
Yep.
So that's the first place. They just won't start. They're like, well, I think I've narrowed it down to 12 niches. I'm like, or they can't even come up with one. So I do have ways to come up with niches. But then the second place is they get something started. They get the whole site built, and then they don't start running ads. And it's because they haven't figured out the marketing. They're focused on, is my site pretty? Is the aesthetic nice? Do I have enough products? Do I have this? What's the customer going to think if they see this? They're overly picky in the quality of it, instead of realizing, like, you've got to ship it. You can make it better over time. And I always tell people, I was like, don't compare yourself to like Nike.com today. You've got to go back and compare yourself to early websites that were just getting started, and look at what works at a minimum level. Like, it's okay to start with an MVP. So I always tell people, like, accept that you're launching it in beta, right? It's a beta, it's a soft launch, whatever you need to call yourself to allow it to be imperfect so that you can get started. So if you can just get to that point where you actually have that first store built, you actually have it there, and then you're actually testing offers and running ads and getting things going, that's where your chances of success just go through the roof. If you can't get to that step, you're never going to make it, right? Because you literally can't. It's not, they won't know you exist,
your product
or you don't exist.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Like, no one will know about it. And then, and well, how about, what have you found personally as you go through those initial motions? And let's just say that you create this MVP site and you have a new idea, you have a new product, you've reinvented yourself, and you start running ads to it. Do you, right now, do you kind of feel it out? Like, if you run ads to it for 2 weeks and you don't get any bites at all, you say to yourself, what's the first thing that you say to yourself at that point?
First, I tell myself how handsome I am, just because I know I feel good, right?
As you should, everyone should.
Once I'm back into a positive state, right, and like looking at the mirror and, gosh darn it, people like me,
God
right?
Damn,
once I've built myself back up, I fully expect offers to fail first. I think that's just the mindset I go into it with. But then I look for like what works. So we start with either 1,000 click or $1,000 test, and we're like, look, let's just get data. We're going to do our best first guess, but I don't know how every market's going to respond. We have one of our clients is a home decor company, and I never would have guessed on some of the products that are taking off. I thought they were too niche. I thought they'd be too specific. And it's like, oh, we've done $1 million of that really random product, right? Like, it's like it's scaling fast, and competitors probably wouldn't have thought that either. Maybe that's one of the reasons. But is so the big thing with any kind of e-commerce or any kind of testing like this is test fast and test a lot, and be willing to like cut the losses and just say, okay, like I invested this in this test. And I would say probably the third place people get stuck is they're willing to do that first test. But then if it doesn't win, then they're like, oh, the whole thing is broken. I'm like, no, take what you learned from that, run a second test, and then take that data, run a third test. And then eventually, like you'll find the things that are working and not working, and you have the ability to really take off. And then you can recoup all that investment faster. But it's easier to do that than to just keep killing it. Or like you can make more money, you can't make more time. So I'm like, look, you can. So people will be like, well, I don't want to spend, $5,000 on testing this month. Let's space it out over 6 months. And I'm like, okay, well, like you want to lose time and money, or do you want to just like invest some money and figure this out? Because in 6 months from now, you could be doing $1 million a month if you learned faster and failed faster.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, you're going to spend $5,000. Do you want to do it quickly and figure something out, or do you want to just slowly drown yourself over 6 months?
Yeah, and it's with e-commerce and with any kind of anything that you're selling, right? A lot of times it's small positioning changes. It's oh, you know what? We needed to change the headline, or we needed to change an image, or we needed to make the product appear more valuable by adding in other things, or adding in a guarantee or some other risk reversal. And there's emotional and logical and like scarcity type metrics. Again, in the marketing side of it, it really helps us understand what works in the physical product side. But yeah, man, just becoming a student of what's working, and you can look at old products and how they sold. And I mean, there's a lot of marketing is a science. And so you can look at the science of it and really accelerate your learning curve.
I always thought of it like engineering. Like I learned so much in the engineering world that it applies to the marketing world. It's like you have a hypothesis, you think something's going to work, right? You got to test it over and over again until it's conclusive that it is or isn't. Tweak it, change it, and that's how you progress. That's how you create ideas. And so it just blows my mind when people say, oh, that will never work, or that will definitely work. You're just like, okay, like you might have high hopes, but test it. Like let's see.
Absolutely.
Well, if people take your advice and they actually went into it was the Facebook ads library, right?
Yep.
They went into that and they checked it out, right? They picked their niche and they checked out the Facebook ads library around that particular product once a day for the next 30 days, right? They started to familiarize themselves with their competitors and what other products they got going on. In your experience, compared to all of the other people that are probably in that niche, right? Where would they be? What would happen to them?
Yeah, I think a little bit depends on if they're already in motion, right? Are they already trying to sell? And let's just, for the sake of this argument, assume that they're at least at the starting line. So I think the biggest thing that is, if every single day they were focused on becoming a student of the marketing and looking at the ads libraries, looking at what's working for not just people in just their direct competitors, in 30 days, you're going to get outside of that bubble. You're going to need to look at what's working in other similar niches and what's working, what kind of ads are crushing it for people in, things different, but that we could apply. I think that as long as you're not just learning, don't become addicted to learning, right? Like learn and apply. Keep that feedback loop really tight. If they do that, I think that you can say, okay, hey, I see this ad's working really well for this guy. I'm going to get that launched, right? So learn, apply. Then, you're talking about compressing 1 to 2 years worth of testing into 30 days. And the difference between 2 years of testing and 30 days of testing, if you condense it, can be everything. I mean, you can talk about becoming a category king in 30 days instead of mediocre over 2 years. There's a huge leverage opportunity to shorten your feedback loop.
And as long as you clearly you clearly define the metrics that you like, the thresholds beforehand, or do you sort of like just kind of look at what happens and then make a judgment call in the moment?
So the nice thing about e-commerce, different than some other industries, is your leading KPIs very quickly. So what was your cost per click? Oh, my cost per click dropped a lot when we ran this one. That means it's a better, at least on our cost per click is better. Then okay, well, what's our cost for add to cart? Is that going down? That's a positive thing. But the real one that we look at is return on ad spend. For every dollar I'm spending, how many dollars am I getting back? Our minimum threshold that we really try to get to, unless somebody has deep pockets and really long-term vision, is 2. Every dollar I put in, I want $2 back. With that, I should be able to cover my cost of goods and I should be in growth. Then I'm focusing on lifetime value. I'm also acquiring customers for free and I can market to them over time. But if we can exceed that, that's even better, right? Obviously. So my thing is you have to set a minimum ROAS. Like what's the lowest I can do to at least be moving forward? And the lower that can be, the more aggressive you can be in your growth. So I have one friend that, grew his supplement company to like $3 million in the first year and a half because he was willing to acquire customers at a 1 ROAS, meaning he was losing money on the product. Yeah. But he knew if he had paying customers, he was going to make that money back in their second order. And anything they ordered after that was pure profit. And now his company is thriving because they have this user base that is marketing for them and generating content for them and doing all this stuff. And so now his return on ad spend has actually gone up and he's doing way better because he was willing to be more aggressive in investing at the beginning. But only do that if you have a long-term strategy. Don't just throw money out the window because you're like, well, I heard once on a Facebook Live that it was a good idea, right? Like have a long-term strategy.
Tyler told me to just do it. Well, I tell you, but you're right. And it is risky for people. It's a scary thing to the thought that you're losing money up front, right? You got to have a long-term play. Like maybe does this thing that you're talking about in your example, is it the same product that people just order and reorder? It's a consumable, or are there more products on top of that?
It's a consumable, and they have more SKUs. So he has a whole line of products, and they're really good. And so he's able to. The lifetime value is really strong for them, and they do a really good job with their community and private Facebook groups where they talk and share and build a community around stuff. So I think one of the things we started at the very beginning talking about picking a niche. I think picking niches really matters. Because if you have a really hot niche of people, and I look at a niche as not like, okay, I want to sell like this particular product, but who is the market I'm selling to? So, and it's one thing to say I'm going to sell, like if you pick a market that's like, hey, I'm a farmer's market, like that's a niche, right? You're typically selling to people who are, organic focused and they want to shop small, right? So that's the niche, not, organic honey. Right? The niche is the market, and then you pick a vertical within that. And so I think finding something where, there's an irrationally passionate market just is going to help move a lot faster. Trying to go mass market, unless you have really deep pockets, super, super hard to do.
Why? Just because in order to be seen in something like that, it's just going to cost you so much in marketing and time.
Yeah. I mean, you have the money to go buy a Super Bowl ad and compete against, the big player? No, of course not. Yeah. And that's okay. But you can become a Super Bowl player in your niche, right? And so you can be the guy that they see, if you're selling home decor in Key West, you can dominate that market at a fraction of a budget. And in that market, you're a celebrity. You're everywhere, right? And so whether that's a geographic market or whether that's just a super niche interest, like I want to sell, sailing apparel, right, for men 30 to 40. It's like, man, I got this, crushing it. I can target that and I can own that all over the internet. And so that kind of stuff, right? If you can really, you can play a Super Bowl level of competition if you go narrow.
Yep. I love it, dude. I want to bring this up because Lyndon asked, right, Tyler, in your experience, do you see benefit to launching a brand new product through ads just before the holidays? What do you think?
So I like this because it implies that there's a good time or a bad time to launch. Yes, the only benefit is if you want to have sales just before the holidays. Right. So again, beginning with the end in mind, right? If the end goal is to sell products, then launch when you're ready, right? Yes, you're going to have slightly higher ad costs. Yes, you're going to have a little bit more competition. Yes, they're going to have some supply chain issues where making sure if people are expecting it before Christmas, you're getting it to them before Christmas. But my thing is launch, right? Just keep moving. Don't wait for the perfect time, because all of a sudden, what the next question, if I said no, oh, you should definitely wait, is,
Right.
well,
Then
I don't know if I should
that.
launch January 1. That's when everyone else is launching. And then they're like, well, it's St. Patrick's Day. And then all of a sudden it's 4th of July and they're like, I can't launch on Independence Day. So yeah, like my thing is launch, be conservative, learn from the data. If you can be successful in the more competitive times, it's just going to get better in the less competitive times.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Like you just want to do it, just do it and let the work teach you the work, just do it.
Yeah. Emotionally, you have to disconnect from the outcome. Financially, you have to stay connected, right? It's data, right? You're a scientist, like you said. You've got to be just taking the data down. But emotionally, it's not you like failing. It's that, hey, that product didn't work or that headline didn't work.
Yeah.
Right? Disconnect yourself from the emotion of it.
That's so tough for people. That's so tough. That's a struggle for people because they invest so much, especially I would mention when they get started, they invest so much time and energy into this, right? That it naturally becomes a part of them. And then when it doesn't work, it is a natural thing to associate it with like your own self-worth instead of just the product.
I think we live in a world and a society right now that is, most people are very disconnected from risk, right? Like you go to a job where you don't see the profit and loss, you don't see the net impact of your actions. It's a big team. Most people are employed by a company, and so you don't see it. So going out and taking risk on your own exposes all kinds of things. Where now you don't get to yell at, hey, it's Susan's down the hall, it's her fault, or it's Toby in HR, it's his fault. It's Toby. You. Yeah. So it's like, man, like it's okay. Like if you just accept that the failure and is not failure, it's a learning, it's part of the testing process, it helps. I'm not saying it doesn't suck. It still sucks when an offer doesn't work. Like it sucks, but it's data. And you learn from it and you say, okay, let's test a different angle. Right. And you just keep moving.
I dig it, man. I like it. I mean, I feel like that really is a metaphor for just about anything in life. Like not just e-com. Like it's a great way to just approach life.
Yeah, you've got to, in the end, you got to control what you can, right? You concentrate on what matters and then cope with what you can't control. If you can't fix it, I can't control Facebook. I can't control if they shut down an ad account, but I can cope with it. And then I can concentrate on stuff I can control and focus on what matters. But in the end, you've got to just stay focused on that. And, as much as possible, disconnect. Or what I always say, if you can't disconnect from it, then just limit the amount of time that you allow yourself to feel sorry for yourself. Give yourself 30 seconds to pout and then move on.
Then get it out of your system.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah. Yeah. I totally dig it, man. Dude, I learned a ton, right? There were some things, because you and I, we had a conversation. Our first major conversation was in Barcelona. We talked a lot about this. And I think at the time you had just done the 176 Shopify stores in 9 months, which just blows my mind, how you were able to make that happen. But we went through some stuff in this call that we didn't talk about. I learned a lot here.
Yeah, it was our conversation that helped me realize I did those 176 stores for this big investment group. And I was like, I think I'd need to leave this project. And I made that decision while we were talking, right after we had finished making paella. It was like, this is the wrong move for me. But so by that night, I'd resigned and moved on from the project. But it was a cool experience just to launch. Everyone was supposed to be in a different niche and a different experience and so different branding. So it was a lot.
I'll tell you, man. And now when you launch a single store, are you just like, meh, whatever, So,
the thing is it's also knowing which part you're really good at, right? So I'm really good at the idea, the initial concept, the initial branding. I'm good at the beginning. I'm a great starter. I have to hire a team of finishers, right? And people that do the day-to-day, because that's not my strength. And I'm at an age of life where I just am leaning into my strengths, and I'm done trying to focus on fixing weaknesses. If it's a weakness that's impacting my life, I'm going to focus on it. But I don't have to be the expert in everything, right? We can hire teams, we can network, we can connect with experts. I'm just you know what? I'm really good at starting. So that's my focus.
I dig it, man. And is that, so tell everybody, right? Because I know that some people here will want to continue the conversation. That's essentially what you're doing with e-commerce flight school. Like, tell us a little bit about that and how people can get in contact with you.
Yeah, so it's funny. It really is exactly what I just said. It's how to start your store, and go from zero to launch in 30 days. How to pick your niche, how to set your goals and your dream line, how to get launched in 30 days. There are a ton of people that have lessons on scale and courses on ads, and there's tons of people that do that. But from my experience, most people struggle getting started. And so I built a program on really how to get started and how to get, set yourself up for success. So it's called E-commerce Flight School. And because I just think it's the idea of it taking flight. And for me, we start with the dream line because it's about creating the lifestyle that you want, right? If you're building a business that you hate and it's taking you way out of the lifestyle you want, like start over, change it up.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you go through, you take people essentially through the process that you described here, going from ideation, right, the dreamlining, and then starting and choosing a niche and just executing. And I think that's so key. Do you end up then, is it a situation where it's a community of people, like you can come in, you can ask you questions, like take it day by day?
Yeah, so we have a private Facebook group for anybody that's purchased the course. The course is on sale right now through the end of the year because we are in beta, right? It's launched and it's live and it works, but it's not where I want it to be. And so eventually the price will go up, 4 times from where it is now. But yeah, it's and we have a Facebook group where you can ask questions and a community where people help each other. It's just getting going, but it's really cool. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I felt that call to contribution to help people get started. And, we do it in an agency where people can spend a lot more money and have us hire us to do it for them. But there's a lot of people that want to learn and they want to do it themselves. And that's why we created E-commerce Flight School.
Yeah, I dig it, man. Dude, this was so good. We've been talking now for 50 minutes. This went by really fast. Man, I tell you, I am so thankful that you took the time. You were a busy man. I know that you got a lot going on, but I'm so appreciative that you took the time to talk to us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. Anytime. I know we can't move around as much, but we'll be traveling the world again here soon.
We will. I'm hoping that the next time we can do the 48-hour Power John is in Dubai. I think that would be
happening. It's already planned. We're just waiting for a date to nail down, but we already got the whole event scheduled. Like,
seriously,
happen.
Seriously, man. Oh, so good. Well, I'll tell you, as we wrap up, any parting words for people that you'd like to leave them with before we go?
Abandon the idea that you have to be perfect to start. Like, your best lessons, your best education is going to be from doing it. If you want to get in e-commerce, just get started and understand that, hey, your first store or your first 2 stores, that's just your training grounds. And if you can adopt that, the learner's mentality, you're going to move a lot faster.
I dig it. I love it. All right. Well, guys, this has been another amazing episode of Firebuilders Live. Tyler, Josh, Elvis, somewhere around here, right? Floating around somewhere. We bid you guys adieu. Thank you so much. Again, we stream 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, different guests. So come join us again. If you'd like, right? If you like what you're listening to and you want to help support the show, right? Go to firebuilderslive.com and check out the amazing stuff that we have offered for you there. So check that out. Tyler, dude, thanks again, man. This has been great.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgenson. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at bizninja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.